I'm gonna do my best to turn this kilogram of chicken wings into this. Tamarind spiced wings from Gordon Ramsay's Bread Street Kitchen Cookbook. Stay till the end. As always, I'll give a taste rating and a P.I.T.A rating so we can answer the question, is it worth it? So let's get cooking and learn something. I'll start with my 1 kilogram of chicken wings. I want to marinate these overnight. So I'll crack this whole egg in the bowl and this will be the base of our marinade. But a just egg marinade wouldn't do much in terms of flavor. Lots of spices coming into this marinade. 2 teaspoons of paprika. I'm running low. We'll have to hit up my paprika plug soon. 1 teaspoon ground cumin, slightly sweet and warming. Half teaspoon ground coriander, floral and a bit citrusy. Garam masala. This will add some warmth to the dish. This big bag though, for just half a teaspoon is a point off on the P.I.T.A score. Half a teaspoon Dijon mustard, tangy and sharp. I'll have to use 2 spoons to get this mustard out. Finally, 1 teaspoon vegetable oil, helping the flavors disperse. I'll thoroughly whisk this marinade until all of the ingredients are mixed well. I'll then pour this marinade all over the wings and give them a good mix so that it's evenly coated and that the flavors can penetrate as much of the meat as possible overnight. Before placing in the fridge, I'll wrap this bowl top to bottom with saran wrap. The next day I've placed out all the ingredients I need for the sauce. This right here though, the tamarind paste, is definitely a specialty ingredient. Tamarinds are a unique fruit that tastes sweet and sour. This will be the standout flavor for this recipe. Yeah, you'll also need a liter of chicken stock. With this many ingredients, I want to get organized as fast as possible by getting my mise en place simplified. I want to get my cutting board out of the way for now, so I'll start by slicing my onion. 1 large onion sliced, and I'll knock this out quickly and set the sliced onion to the side. The recipe starts with 1 teaspoon of chili flakes, 2 teaspoons of fennel seeds, 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds. Oh, and look at this, I am missing an ingredient. The coriander seeds were still in my freezer. I'll add 2 teaspoons of these coriander seeds. That's all the spices I'll need, so I'll get those set to the side. The recipe calls for tomato puree, but I only have tomato paste, so I think the solution here will be to dilute my tomato paste by 50%. I'll go ahead and toss 1 tablespoon of my paste in my ramekin here, and then dilute it with 1 tablespoon of water. I could have just done this when I added it into the pot, but we're making a video, so let's go the extra mile for visualization. I'll need to measure out 2 ingredients in grams, so out comes my scale. I'll start with 50 grams of brown sugar, and finally 75 grams of my finest Vietnamese honey. I need 4 tablespoons of ketchup, which is 1/3 of a cup, so I'll measure with that to save myself time. And I am out of ketchup. But luckily, the junk drawer of my refrigerator has a nice stash of ketchup packets from Popeye's Chicken. Thanks, Popeyes. I always knew those 27 packs of ketchup you give me with every order will come in handy. All right, disaster averted. I'll add that ketchup into the other ingredients. Now I need 5 tablespoons of Worcestershire, but I'm way too lazy to measure 5 tablespoons, so I'll go with 1/3 of a cup plus a tablespoon to speed up things. And another 5 tablespoons of white wine vinegar. And I'll do the same thing. This is still missing that key ingredient which this recipe is named for, and that's the tamarind paste. I'll add 3 tablespoons of this tamarind to the bowl, and that's the last of my ingredients for the sauce. A little Michael Jackson single glove thumbs up because I did a good job. Now we have reduced this pile of unorganized, incomplete ingredients onto a nice organized tray. There's no way I can fuck this up now. Onto my burner with a dry saute pan. This is a rip-off version of one of those Gordon Ramsay pans. Not only am I sharing his recipes, I'm buying pans from his competition. I just don't have Gordon Ramsay pan disposable income. Sorry, chef. These will only take a minute or 2 for the aromatic aroma to start to release. These are smelling really nice, and it's time to come off before I start to burn them. To get as much of that flavor out of these seeds and into our sauce, they need to be broken up. So I'll grab my mortar and pestle here, You can also do this in a spice mill, but my spice mill is like 10 years old and has transformed from white to yellow, so it's not camera worthy. Once the spices are in my mortar and pestle, I'll start smashing them up. When making spice mixes like this, I always feel curious about how these flavors are going to work together. I don't think the average person can say, oh, I can really taste that teaspoon of coriander seeds coming through with the 2 teaspoons of fennel seeds. Maybe it's one of those things where the whole is greater than the sum of something. I don't know. I'm not good at math. And they're looking good, so I'll set this mortar of spices to the side. Time for my pot to go on the burner. The sauce needs some complexity of flavor, so 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil go in, and I'll sweat these sliced onions down. This is going to give us a bit of depth in the sauce, so I'm just sweating this down, not looking for any color really, although I'm getting some. I'll throw our coarse spice blend into the onions and cook for a couple more minutes. This will release more of that flavor from the spices and also prevent us from having a raw spice taste that isn't pleasing. After a couple minutes, I'll add the tomato puree. Tomato puree and paste need to be cooked a bit when adding into a sauce. Otherwise, again, you get a really raw tomato flavor in your sauce that is not pleasant. All of this is just really creating layers of flavor into the sauce. Honestly, cooking through Gordon's cookbook has really brought back those lessons from culinary school about creating layers of flavor and depth that I haven't thought about much in the last few years. My ingredients here are really starting to stick to the bottom of my pot, so I want to get my liquid ingredients in before I start burning this sauce base. Adding a burnt flavor definitely isn't the depth of flavor I'm looking for. I'll mix this up a bit and then add in my liter of chicken stock so that we can let this sauce simmer. If we didn't add the chicken stock, there wouldn't really be enough time for the spice flavors to build into anything that we added, and the sauce would be just crazy strong. This stock dilutes all of those other ingredients and adds a liquid for all of these flavors to meld into over time. I want to bring this up to a boil and then adjust it down to a simmer, but the Bread Street Kitchen cookbook has me messed up. It reads, bring to the boil, then reduce the heat, cover and simmer, uncovered, for 55 minutes to an hour. So, is it covered or uncovered? I think the whole point of letting this simmer for an hour is to let these spice flavors build and deepen into our stock, so it wouldn't make sense to start reducing the sauce uncovered. So I think the uncovered line was the mistake in this print. The sauce has come to a boil. I'll slap a lid on it, and I'm going to bring it down to the lowest temperature setting I have on my electric burner. And I want this to sit for 50 minutes, and I'll come back and check it before the last 10 minutes. I have a lot of time on my hands while waiting, so I think I'll let the garnish for this dish get knocked out. I'll need a small bunch of green onions and a small bunch of coriander. When garnishing with green onions, I want to cut on a nice bias to increase the length of the piece, and that will look really nice on our dish. I'll pick individual leaves off the coriander here. Since I'm at home, I'll just use any of the leaves, but in a restaurant setting, you would probably only pick the nicest ones you can find. And the garnish is done. I'll set both of these to the side. And time's up on my sauce. I'll take the lid off and give this a stir. I also want to give it a taste to get an idea of what we're cooking here. And so far, so good. It's time to strain the onions and spices from our sauce, so I'll grab a 6th pan here and place 2 strainers on top. 2 probably wasn't necessary, but I wanted to keep from having to strain this twice if one wasn't enough. The onions are clogging up the strainer, so I'll push through with a wooden spoon. I'll press those onions against the mesh to squeeze every drop of flavorful sauce out of the onions, and then discard the onions and spice base. I have to tell you, at this point, this sauce is smelling so good. My house smells super aromatic from those spices and a sour note in the air from the tamarind. Now that this is strained, I'm gonna go back in my pot after I cleaned it. I only have one good pot this size. I'll place this back on my burner to begin reducing the liquid into a thick gravy consistency to coat our wings. And that's the boil we are looking for here. I'll set a timer for 35 minutes. Time's nearly up. Let's check and taste the sauce. I can see that this is reduced by 50% at least. It's coating the spoon quite nicely, and it's time for a taste. And this is really nice. Again, with Gordon's recipe, it's been taking me back to a nice, balanced flavor approach with food and really paying attention to doing those small extra steps to get the most out of our ingredients and flavor. This is sweet, but not too sweet. It's sour, but not too sour. And the background spices are bringing this a bitterness. It's a really good sauce. I'll add a bit of salt to the sauce and turn off the heat. This just needs to be set aside and kept warm until it's time to sauce our wings. I got this brand new deep frying pan I'm excited to use. I'll attach a little thermometer to it and make sure it's not touching the pan on the inside, which would throw off the temperature reading. I got super lucky. Downstairs, they were offering a buy two, get one free on bottles of oil, and I thought that timing is perfect since I'm making fried chicken wings today. I'll go ahead and fill my deep frying pan up about 2/3 of the way up. I want to be careful here as to not get any spillover of oil when I add the chicken. While that might be entertaining for you, I would rather slam my finger in a door than have to clean that kind of BP oil spill up. A nice coating would typically require some type of flour or starch on the outside, and I've really been sold on the Asian style of coating wings with corn and potato starch when I did my recent video on Chinese chicken wings, which you can check out in the link above. So I'm feeling suspect because our recipe today is only using 80 grams of all-purpose flour mixed with a bit of salt, but we'll give it a chance. This salt I'm using is clumping together, so I added a bit too much into this flour. I give it a taste and it's just too salty, so I'm gonna have to add a bit more flour here to even that salt out. Ta-da! Our chicken is back, marinated overnight and ready to become crispy deliciousness all up in my mouth. I should have done this yesterday, but I forgot to cut these drums from the flats, so I'll jump in here now with my scissors and separate them. My fryer oil is getting close to temperature, so I need to bread these wings and get them ready to go when my oil is ready. Otherwise, I risk the oil getting too hot and having to wait for it to come back down to temperature. These wings will only need a light coating of flour, and the egg we have in the marinade helps get the flour to stick nicely onto them. I'll only coat half of these wings as I want to save the rest for tomorrow so I can share with my girlfriend and my operations manager to see what they think. Oil's hot, so wings must go in. I'll just cook half of the wings I breaded for now because I want to be careful here. I'll cook these drums for 10 minutes and flipping them every once in a while just in case one side is getting too hot. And these are looking great. This light coating of flour was really more than enough to create a crispy breading on the outside of these. These have been floating for about a minute or so. I'm gonna pull them off and place them onto a paper towel to drain off some of that excess oil. I have an oven set to low that I'll place these wings in to keep them warm. This pan does its job well. The temperature is already back at 350 and has honestly stayed there during the whole cooking process. So I'm ready to go in with this second batch right away. These wing flats started floating around the 6 or 7 minute mark, so I'll pull them at 8 minutes, but leave that solo drummy in there for a minute longer. Everything's cooked up, and I want to get my sauce on here while the wings are still nice, hot, and crispy. I see I have a lot of sauce, and I don't think I'll need half of it to coat these wings, so I'll just start with a bit and see how that looks. Giving it a nice toss so everything coats nicely, and I see I can use a bit more sauce here. And these look good. It is time to plate. Luckily, I randomly bought this one dish that looked like a casserole, and it matches spot on with the photo from the cookbook, so that's what I'm going to use to plate. Time to garnish with a few of these coriander leaves and then a bit of spring onions on the top, and this is looking good. The smell of that sauce has my mouth watering, and I'm really dying to jump in and rate these wings and the recipe. This isn't a utensil job. I'll need these wet naps provided by my food tour company I own and sponsor this video, Back of the Bike Tours, and a paper towel roll. I'm ready to dig in, and I'll go for a drummy on the first bite. The wing is still a bit crunchy, which is great. The breading on this isn't heavy. The sauce is a really nice balance between that sweet, tart, and bitter I mentioned earlier, while being extremely aromatic. In Vietnam, I eat a lot of tamarind sauce with seafood, so having something like this that has a lot more balance and background spice to it, it's just a really nice change of pace. The taste score for this dish is going to be a strong 8 out of 10. I really love this sauce. I even grabbed the pot and want to dip directly into it. The P.I.T.A score, which remember means how much of an overall pain in the ass is this recipe. This rates an 8 out of 10. There is really a minimal amount of cutting in this recipe and not a lot of cleanup. The only fault I can give it is the sheer amount of ingredients, and with one of those ingredients, the tamarind sauce, being very specific and something most people wouldn't use in their kitchen for anything else. The garam masala as well is an ingredient that you might not have in your kitchen and you would just pick up for this recipe. And in that case, I think you could probably even just leave it out of the recipe. I would also take a point off for this being a fried recipe. Just frying in your house is a pain in the ass in general if you don't have a deep fryer. It's a bit messy and smelly. I know my mom hates it and has literally banned me from making fried chicken in her kitchen. Overall, this is worth making and a recipe I really enjoyed. It's a dish that I will keep in mind for my next party or event, and it's going to impress the hell out of my friends.